Imagine for a moment that everything you were taught about money by your loving, hardworking parents was wrong. Not just a little off, but fundamentally, dangerously wrong. What if the very advice meant to give you a secure life was actually a trap, keeping you in a lifelong cycle of financial struggle? Hello, and welcome to You Are What You Read. I'm your host, Sam, and as always, I'm joined by the best co-host a bookworm could ask for.
It's great to be here, Sam, and you've definitely piqued my interest with that intro. It sounds like we're diving into a book that's going to challenge some long-held beliefs.
That's putting it mildly, Jane. Today, we're dissecting a book that has sold over 40 million copies worldwide and has been a cornerstone of personal finance conversations for over 2 decades. We're talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert T. Kiyosaki. This book poses a central and, I think for many people, a revolutionary question. What do the rich teach their kids about money that the poor and middle class do not?
I've seen this book everywhere, Sam. It has such a distinctive purple cover, and the title itself is so provocative. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It immediately sets up this comparison, this story.
Exactly. And that's the core of the book's structure. Kiyosaki shares the lessons he learned about money from 2 father figures in his life. His own father, the poor dad, was a highly educated man, the head of the Hawaiian school system, who, despite a good income, struggled financially his whole life. His rich dad was his best friend's father, an 8th grade dropout who became one of the wealthiest men in Hawaii. The book is a collection of the lessons his rich dad taught him, which were often in direct opposition to the advice of his poor dad.
So it's not just a dry textbook on finance. It's framed as a series of personal lessons. I like that. It feels more approachable. But Sam, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what's the big overarching idea here? If a listener only remembers one thing from our conversation today, what should it be?
The big idea is this. The rich don't work for money. They make money work for them. This isn't about getting a raise or a promotion. It's about a fundamental shift in your mindset and your understanding of how wealth is actually built. It's about achieving financial freedom, not just job security.
Okay, make money work for you. I've heard that phrase before, but it always felt a bit abstract. I'm hoping you can make that concrete for us today. Where do we start?
We start with the most important lesson from Rich Dad, and it's our first key takeaway. You must know the difference between an asset and a liability, and buy assets.
All right, that sounds simple enough. An asset is something valuable, right? Like a house or a car?
And that, Jane, is the exact misconception that Kiyosaki says keeps the middle class in the rat race. His definitions are incredibly simple and powerful. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. It's all about cash flow.
Puts money in your pocket, takes money out. Okay, so a car loan would be a liability. Credit card debt, a liability. What about a house? Isn't that an asset?
According to Rich Dad, for most people, their primary residence is their biggest liability, not their greatest asset. Think about it. You have a mortgage payment, property taxes, insurance, maintenance, utilities. Money is constantly flowing out of your pocket.
Whoa, okay, that's a perspective shift. I think a lot of people, myself included, have always seen their home as their primary investment. But when you put it in terms of cash flow, I see his point. So if a house isn't necessarily an asset, what is?
An asset, in Kiyosaki's world, would be something like a rental property that generates positive cash flow each month after all expenses are paid. Stocks that pay dividends. A business that you own but don't have to actively work in. Intellectual property that generates royalties. These are things that once acquired, put money into your pocket whether you go to work that day or not.
So the goal is to spend your life acquiring these income-generating assets. And the more assets you have, the more passive income you have, and the less you need to rely on a paycheck from a job.
Precisely. Rich Dad's philosophy is to build up your asset column to the point where the income from your assets covers all your expenses. At that point, you're financially free. You can still choose to work, but you don't have to.
This is already making me look at my own finances differently. It's not about how much you earn, but what you do with what you earn. So if lesson 1 is about assets versus liabilities, what's the next big takeaway?
The second key takeaway is a direct consequence of the first: mind your own business. Kiyosaki makes a crucial distinction between your profession and your business. Your profession is what you do to earn a paycheck. Your business is your asset column.
So if I'm a teacher, that's my profession, but my business is what exactly?
Your business is the portfolio of assets you are building. The problem, as Rich Dad sees it, is that most people spend their lives minding someone else's business. You work for your employer. You work to pay the government in taxes. And you work to pay the bank your mortgage and credit card bills. You're making everyone else rich, but you're not building your own wealth.
That's a powerful and slightly uncomfortable thought. So minding your own business means actively building that asset column we just talked about, even while you're working your day job?
Exactly. Keep your day job, your profession, but use the income from that job to buy assets, not liabilities. Don't go out and buy a new car or a bigger house when you get a raise. Instead, buy a stock, a bond, a piece of real estate, or invest in a side business. Spend your time and money acquiring things that will generate future income.
This reminds me of the concept of paying yourself first, but instead of just putting money into a savings account, Kiyosaki is saying to put it into an asset.
That's a great way to put it, and it leads us directly into our third key takeaway, which is a big one. The rich invent money.
Okay, now you've lost me a bit, Sam. Invent money? That sounds a little out there. Are we talking about printing our own currency in the basement?
No, not at all. It's about financial intelligence. Rich Dad's point is that the poor and middle class are taught to work hard for their money. The rich, on the other hand, learn how to create opportunities that generate wealth. They see what others miss.
Can you give me an example? What does it look like to invent money?
Kiyosaki gives a great example from his own life. He would look for undervalued real estate, a house in foreclosure, or a property that the owner needed to sell quickly. He would put in a low offer, often with little or none of his own money, by finding a partner or using creative financing. Then, once he controlled the property, he could either sell it quickly for a profit or rent it out to create a new stream of passive income. He didn't work for that money in the traditional sense. He used his financial knowledge to create a deal, an opportunity that generated wealth.
So it's about seeing value where others see risk or hassle. It's about problem solving and being creative. It's not just about having money to invest, it's about having the knowledge to find good investments.
Exactly. And that financial intelligence is our fourth and final key takeaway. Work to learn, don't work for money.
This seems to contradict the whole idea of getting a job to earn money to buy assets. What does he mean by this?
Rich Dad advised the young Kiyosaki to take jobs not for the salary, but for the skills they could learn. If you're afraid of rejection, take a job in sales to learn how to overcome that fear. If you don't understand numbers, work in an accounting department for a while. The goal is to acquire skills that will make you a more competent investor and business owner.
That makes a lot of sense. So instead of just climbing the corporate ladder in one specific field, you're strategically acquiring a broad base of knowledge. Sales, marketing, accounting, law, negotiation. These are all skills that would help you invent money and build your asset column.
You've got it. Poor Dad valued job security and specialization. Rich Dad valued learning and adaptability. He believed that the most valuable asset you have is your mind. The more you train it, the more opportunities you'll see, and the wealthier you'll become.
So to recap the core ideas, 1, know the difference between an asset and a liability and buy assets. 2, mind your own business, which is your asset column. 3, the rich invent money by seeing opportunities. And 4, work to learn, skills, not just for a paycheck. This is a really different way of looking at the world than what most of us are taught.
It absolutely is, and it's designed to be. It's a direct challenge to the traditional path of go to school, get good grades, find a safe, secure job, and retire with a pension. Kiyosaki argues that in today's world, that path is riskier than ever.
I can see why this book has been so influential, but also why it might be controversial. It's a pretty radical departure from conventional wisdom. And I have to ask, Sam, as I'm listening to this, I can already hear some of the counter-arguments. For example, the idea that a house is a liability. For many families, their home equity is the largest source of wealth they have. How does Kiyosaki address that?
That's a fantastic and important question, Jane. Kiyosaki isn't saying don't ever buy a house. What he's saying is to understand its primary function in your financial life. If you have to work to pay for it every month, it's taking money out of your pocket. His advice would be to first build up your asset column. Buy that rental property, that dividend-paying stock, and let the income from those assets pay for your dream home. Then, your house becomes a true luxury, paid for by your investments, not by your own labor.
Buy your assets first and then let your assets buy your luxuries. That's a powerful reframing. But what about the risk? Investing in real estate or the stock market feels a lot scarier to most people than putting money in a savings account. The book seems to encourage taking big risks.
It encourages taking calculated risks, which is different from being reckless. And the key to managing risk, according to Rich Dad, is financial education. The reason investing feels risky to most people is because they haven't been trained to see the opportunities and understand the rules of the game. They're playing without knowing how to play. The more financially literate you become, the less risky investing is.
And I have to bring this up, Sam. There's been some criticism of the book over the years. Some people have questioned whether Rich Dad was a real person or a composite character. And others say the advice is too simplistic and lacks concrete, actionable steps. How do we square that with the book's message?
You're right to bring that up, and it's a valid point of discussion. Kiyosaki himself has been somewhat ambiguous about whether Rich Dad is a single individual or an amalgamation of his mentors. But for me, as a reader, I try to focus on the value of the lessons themselves. Whether there was one Rich Dad or 10, the principles he espouses are what's important. As for the lack of specific steps, I see Rich Dad, Poor Dad not as a how-to manual, but as a why-to book. Its purpose is to shift your mindset. Once your mindset has shifted, you'll be motivated to seek out the how-to information, the books on real estate investing, the courses on stock analysis. This book is the spark, not the entire fire.
That's a great way to look at it. It's the starting point of a journey. So let's talk about that journey. For our listeners who are feeling inspired by these ideas, how can they start applying this knowledge to their own lives? What's the first step?
The first step is the simplest and in some ways the hardest. You need to sit down and honestly assess your own financial situation through the lens of Rich Dad's definitions. Make 2 columns on a piece of paper. In one column, list your assets, things that are currently putting money into your pocket. In the other, list your liabilities, things that are taking money out of your pocket.
I have a feeling that for many people, the liability column is going to be a lot longer than the asset column at first, and that could be a little disheartening.
It might be, but that honesty is the necessary starting point. You can't get to where you want to go if you don't know where you are. And once you have that clear picture, the goal becomes simple. Every month, do something to make the asset column longer and the liability column shorter. That could mean paying down a high-interest credit card, or it could mean taking that $100 you were going to spend on a new gadget and buying a share of a dividend-paying ETF instead. Start small.
I love that. It's not about becoming a millionaire overnight. It's about changing your daily and monthly habits. It's a shift from a consumer mindset to an investor mindset. And what about the work to learn principle? How can someone with a full-time job and a family start incorporating that?
That's where the "you are what you read" philosophy comes in. It starts with self-education. Dedicate a few hours each week to learning about personal finance and investing. Read books, listen to podcasts like this one, watch educational YouTube videos. If you're interested in real estate, start reading websites and forums dedicated to it. If the stock market intrigues you, open a practice trading account and learn how it works without risking real money. The goal is to build your financial IQ, piece by piece.
And I think it's also about having conversations. Talk to your partner, your friends about these ideas. Money is such a taboo subject for so many people, but if we can start to open up and share what we're learning, it can be incredibly empowering.
Absolutely. And that brings us full circle. The reason Poor Dad was poor, despite his education and hard work, was largely due to his mindset and his lack of financial education. The reason Rich Dad was rich was because he understood the system and taught his son how to operate within it. This book is Kiyosaki's attempt to share that education with the rest of us.
It really is a paradigm shift. It's not just about budgeting better or saving more, it's about fundamentally changing your relationship with money and work. It's about seeing the world not just as a place to earn a living, but as a place to build wealth.
That's the core message. It's about moving from financial struggle to financial security and ultimately to financial freedom.
Sam, this has been incredibly enlightening. You've taken a book that many people have heard of but may not fully understand, and you've broken it down into these powerful, digestible lessons. I feel like I have a whole new framework for thinking about my own financial future.
That's the goal, Jane. And that's the power of a great book. It can change the way you see the world.
So for our listeners, here is our challenge to you, straight from the pages of Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This week, we want you to do that exercise Sam mentioned. Take out a piece of paper and create your own personal financial statement. 2 columns, assets and liabilities. Be honest with yourself. And once you've done that, identify one small action you can take this month to add to your asset column. It could be as simple as buying 1 share of a low-cost index fund or putting $50 towards a business idea you've been thinking about. Start small.
We'd love to hear about your experiences. Leave a comment below and tell us what you discovered. What's the one thing you're going to do to start minding your own business? Let's get this conversation started.
And if you found this deep dive valuable and want to continue your journey of learning from the world's most impactful books, make sure you subscribe to You Are What You Read. We have so many more game-changing ideas to share with you.
Thanks for joining us. Now go out there and start building your asset column.